Hello, SSSVEDA followers. You'll have to excuse my voice because I have a bit of laryngitis from a cold. But I didn't want to skip out on talking about the most adventurous thing I've ever done, which was the question of the day to answer. And I was thinking about how to answer this because I've done a lot of things that some people would consider to be adventurous, and I kind of thought of it on a spectrum. So one thing is I thought that it probably should have some risk of physical harm or danger. I mean, I don't know, we can call it an adventure, but it's not very adventurous if you have nothing to lose. Also, I didn't really want to call it an adventure if it's something a lot of different people have done. So, one of the candidates for things I've done is I got a chance to ride in the original Batcopter helicopter, which is an old Bell 47. It was restored to airworthiness and everything, and it was, it happens that a week after I flew in that helicopter, I saw an identical helicopter crash, and I actually caught it on film. I'll have to try and dig that up and repost it. But the problem with that is, even though it was something not a lot of people have done with that specific helicopter, a lot of people have flown in helicopters, and I didn't really have to have a lot of skin in the game. I mean, yeah, it was a little bit risky. Flying in anything is a little bit risky. But, all I had to do is just plop down some money, and then I was on, and then after the ride was over, I was off. So there wasn't really a lot of skin in the game. So I'd say that based on my definition of adventurous, which is something where you face great personal risk, it really isn't something casual. It's a large commitment, and it's something that not a lot of people do in their lives. I would say the riskiest thing I've done is back in college. I was getting involved in some grassroots special interest groups, and they were bringing various candidates to my university to speak. And I didn't think that the pool of candidates was very diverse. So I started asking this organization to consider inviting not just the major party candidates. Here in the United States, it's the Republicans and the Democrats, but also to invite all minor party candidates who wanted to address the group for our issue. So I was able to find a guy by the name of Bill Pearce, and he was a PhD economist who taught at the Case Western Reserve University, and he was actually running for the governor of Ohio at the time. Ohio is the state I live in. And so I got him the opportunity to speak before this group, and I started really looking into some of the ways he thought, not just on the single issue that I was involved with, but on a lot of other issues as well. It turns out he was a libertarian candidate, and I'd been following their developments for a while, but I ended up he was looking for a candidate for lieutenant governor, which is essentially the right-hand man to the governor or woman. It's the governor's helper. So, for example, if the governor were to pass away in office, that person would become the governor by default. Or if he would be incapacitated, or if he'd just be busy and need some help with something. In Ohio, there really are no qualifications for the governor other than, I believe, you have to be 18 years old. And that's about it. So it's really entirely up to the candidate to choose who their candidate or who their running mate will be as lieutenant governor. So I was a college student at the time. I was very busy with schoolwork, and I offered to help him in the search for a candidate for lieutenant governor. So I compiled a list of all of the people I knew of in the state of Ohio that I thought would make an outstanding candidate for lieutenant governor, and I gave him the list. And after, I think it was about a week, he and his team went over the list, and they may have contacted some of the people, I don't know. but they eventually found the person that they wanted to be lieutenant governor, the lieutenant governor candidate, and that person, they informed me, was me. So I I hadn't really, I mean, I thought about going into politics, but I thought about maybe doing it as like some kind of small local office. And here I was, I think a junior in college, maybe a senior, I forget. And they were asking me to run to be essentially the, you know, the second in command for the entire state I live in. Um, so I talked it over with some friends and family, and we, I decided, I only get, a lot of people don't really get that chance. A lot of people also don't get asked. So I took that opportunity. I think my grades took only a minor hit. I ended up learning a ton about the process, the political process, especially. I think you learn a lot more when you participate as a minor party candidate. I prefer to call them a challenger party because they're challenging the establishment. There's nothing more, there's nothing minor about their perspectives. It's just they tend to be, using the term minor party tends to diminish their value as a voice in the process. So one thing I thought was very interesting is that even though supposedly we were minor and we're going to have a minor effect on the election, tremendous amount of effort was made to prevent us from having any kind of a voice in the race. They would mobilize large numbers of protesters that would, when our candidates' representatives were protesting that our campaign had been excluded from a major debate, then the major party candidates, it was almost like they just snapped their fingers and hundreds of people would show up to surround us and visually almost erase us from the scene. I mean, you couldn't really tell that we were there protesting because we had a very small campaign. We only had maybe 5 people protesting that we weren't allowed to speak in the debate, and here you'd have 20, 30, 40, 50, even more people all just kind of milling around, and it would be hard for anyone to know that that we were the reason that for the protest. One way that they were able to get some attention is one of the guys, there were so many counter protesters to us that our actual protesters couldn't fit on the sidewalk, and so to walk up and down the sidewalk, one of our helpers, he stepped off of the sidewalk and into the street, and the police immediately arrested him. So it was just an interesting situation. So that was in 2006 when I did that for the first time. I ran for a number of other offices, which all of these were one great adventure. I really learned a lot about how the process works, or more appropriately, doesn't work. I was involved in a federal lawsuit against the Secretary of State of Ohio, where we were suing for the right to have the name of our party appear next to our candidates, which is something that most people take for granted. And a lot of people don't really understand. I hear, even today, I hear all these people say, well, I'm an independent. Well, there's no independent in Ohio. There are unaffiliated voters, and there used to be an independent. That would be a major party candidate who ran for office and then didn't earn the party's nomination, and so they could still run in the general election, but they had to run independent of the major party. So an independent was someone who'd lost a major party contest and was still running in the general election. Well, since those days, they passed a thing called the sore loser law. So now if you lose in a major party primary, you're not allowed to run at all in the general election. So now they have unaffiliated candidates. So anyway, we won the lawsuit in, I think it was 2007. And all what we won is the right to just list the name of our party next to the candidates on the ballot. So I've run for office a couple of different times at different levels, and very small budget campaigns, very small, corps of volunteers and that kind of thing. And I think one of the main reasons for that is that I wasn't making a lot of promises to wealthy people, and so it's they didn't really have any incentive for funding me, and the odds were very long that I didn't have a lot of funds, so I wasn't going to be able to communicate my message widely. So it didn't really matter if it was popular. I've always said I tend to get along well with people, and in a one-to-one conversation on this kind of thing, people tell me all the time that even though they may disagree with me on a lot of the details or a lot of key issues, they really do think that they've told me they thought I'd be a good candidate and that they'd vote for me. I know all kinds of people who have opposing views, and they said they voted for me on election day. So I always kind of wished I had the chance to just sit down and have lunch with every single voter in my district, and I think I might be able to eke out a victory. But that's impractical and probably not going to ever happen. But so I started to learn a little bit more about the dynamics of political parties and how they operate and run for office. And so most recently, in the most recent election cycle, we actually had a situation where the party in control, the Republican Party, actually got a law through that drastically changes the criteria for who may have a recognized political party, once again with candidates who have their party affiliation written next to their name. So you can run as an unaffiliated candidate, but if you want to have the name of your party next to it, then you have to meet certain criteria. Well, that wasn't necessarily an immediate elimination from the political process, except for that very same year, the major party, the Republican Party, spent over $500,000 in attorney's fees finding a person to contest all of our signatures to get on the ballot for many of our candidates at the top levels of office. And so as a result of this, the top level candidates were removed from the ballot, and one of the criteria for being a political party is you actually have to get a certain number of votes at these top level offices. So it was kind of a two-tiered attack, and so all of our top tier candidates were removed from the ballot, and then on top of that, on top of the top tier candidates, then we didn't meet the threshold to continue being a party. So we're in this really weird situation now where organizationally we're still the same political party we were. We're just not allowed to tell anyone about it. We still have to track all of our paperwork, apparently, just as if we were a legitimate party. It's just that we're not allowed to participate in any of the political party processes. So it's really a situation where we have all of the downsides of being a political party, but we have none of the upsides, such as being able to have primaries and recognized party status. So it's a very interesting situation, and it's over the past couple of years, it's been a really large adventure. But what I think I've come to learn is that, it was very clear from the outset, but being involved for so long has just underscored that the entire game of politics is very clearly rigged, and all you have to do is just look at the laws, and more importantly, if a law somehow doesn't catch some kind of extreme edge case, it's amazing how quickly the parties in control will change the laws to address that edge case. So that brings us to the current presidential race here in the United States. You've got some very popular candidates, and I mean that in the in the very democratic sense of these candidates have appeared on the ballot before a wide number of Americans, and they've gotten a lot of their votes. You've got Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, and they're two interesting stories because Bernie Sanders is from the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party structured their delegate selection process or their candidate selection process, knowing full well that at some point in the future they may choose to simply ignore and override the choice of the people. And so what they've done is they've put in place a system called superdelegates. And it's explained. I can put a link down in the description. I'm not sure if I'll get to it before this video goes up, but I will add it. But there's a video of the head of the Democratic Party who explains that the system was put in place because they really like to have people feel like they're involved in the process, but sometimes through the democratic process, Democratic Party members, in her view, pick the wrong candidate. And so they like to be able to override that and correct that mistake and pick the right candidate for the Democratic people. So I just think that's kind of amusing coming from the Democratic Party, that they have it built right into their system so that they can ignore democracy whenever it suits them. The Republican Party, another major party here in the United States, they do much the same thing. Except they're less upfront about it. So they don't necessarily have a superdelegate system that is arranged the same way. They have kind of a horse race kind of thing going up into the convention. And in 2012, there was a candidate named Ron Paul who was a very popular candidate. And his campaign was working very hard to try and at least get him into a floor debate with at the convention with the presumptive nominee, and they had all the paperwork filled out to make it happen. And the idea was that after a debate right there on the floor, that a lot of these delegates, enough of the delegates, would maybe shift to Ron Paul so that he could actually win the nomination, even though he didn't initially have enough delegates to do so. Well, the Republican Party, before this debate was able to happen, in fact, I think they were on their way to file the paperwork, the Republican Party had a meeting and changed their rules, and they created what they call now the Ron Paul rule, and it essentially negated his ability to do that. It essentially just put the kibosh on all their plans and prevented him from having any chance at winning the nomination. So it's interesting because now you've got a similar situation coming up with Donald Trump, who, he's the leader in delegate count, but actually now there are some in the GOP who don't want him to get the nomination, and so they're looking at actually repealing the Ron Paul rule, and then they'll have a chance to do some more rule changes and possibly take away the nomination from, once again, someone who, through the democratic process, is currently in the lead when it comes to the delegate count. So it's really, I think it should be telling to voters in America, but also around the world, any voters who do look to America as an example, perhaps, of how fair and free elections may work, that both of the major parties here pretty much change the rules so that it suits them and excludes everyone else. And I don't think it's really that apparent, as long as you're still a spectator, until you've actually run for office and seen some of this stuff. For example, one of the races that I've run a couple of times is the race for a state representative. It's actually a pretty small geographical area to cover, so it's doable. It doesn't really cost a lot of money. I think you could probably run a decent campaign for about $10,000 and or sorry, $100,000. And I raised $10,000 roughly in one of my more recent campaigns. So and much of that was due to my campaign manager, who she just went out on Facebook and just asked all of my contacts on Facebook to donate a little bit of money. We had one donor who was very generous and donated about half, and then the rest came from other people. So I think though, with a more, with a larger campaign, more than two kind of full-time people, and then a smattering of volunteers here and there, if there were a more organized thing, I think $100,000 possibly would have been doable. But what happened in that case is it looked like $100,000 is about where my opponent was going to be as far as fundraising for the whole election. But then in the last couple days, from the state level party, she was a Republican candidate. She had, I think it was $5 million in what are known as in-kind contributions that were dumped on her campaign. Pardon me, that's my clock alarming. But she had this huge sum of money dumped on her campaign, but it wasn't cash. It was, if I had just a bunch of cash donated to me, then it would have been very difficult for me to coordinate its expenditure, and there are a lot of editorial decisions that need to be made with communications, and then the candidate would have to be available for all this stuff. In her case, this is like ready-made, pre-made stuff. She didn't really have to have a lot of involvement. And I've actually talked with another GOP candidate that I ran against, who later ended up being a senator in Washington, representing my area. And, I talked to him on the campaign trail, and he's like, "Oh, how's it going?" And I said, "Oh, really busy, just, doing the basics, putting together these pieces and everything." And he just laughed at me and he said, I don't even have to do any of that stuff. It's all done for me. So, I think people need to maybe realize what party machines that we have, and think about ways that to dismantle them possibly. Though of course there are a lot of people out there who believe that they benefit from the party machine, and so they're happy to let it continue on. So anyway, sorry it's a little long, and also sorry about my laryngitis. It's sounds worse than it feels, but hopefully I'll be back to normal in a couple of days. But yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my greatest adventure, and after thinking about it, I think that's probably been it. And I think second to that is an adventure that I'm just starting on now, which is the adventure of being a father. And so I have 2 kids, and that's been a great adventure, and it's been exhausting sometimes, but it's just been tremendously rewarding. And I talked earlier in an earlier vlog post about how my greatest mentor was my grandfather, and he was one of the older people I knew. And so one time I asked him about what he thought the meaning of life was, which, that sounds like a SSSVEDA question right there. He told me that, I'd thought a lot about the meaning of life. What do you want to do? Do you want to get a bridge named after you, or a building, or a company, or something like that? I mean, how do you really get a legacy going? And he told me that the meaning of life was to be such a large part of someone else's life that, whether it's someone that you're genetically related to, or just someone that's a friend of yours, to become such a big part of their life that even after you're gone, they take you with them into the future. And so that's really what I think parenthood is. it's in a very in a genetic sense, we're perpetuating the lineage by having kids. But I think kids learn a lot, and a lot of who they become is very similar to their parents and their upbringing. So I think it's kind of my shot at you know putting a little part of me into the future when I help kids. So I just have a lot of fun doing it, and I'm just so amazed at all of the things that kids do, and I hear other parents feel the same way. It's just amazing sometimes seeing the little things that kids do that surprise you, that go beyond what capabilities you thought they have. I mean, it's little stuff like my son tonight. He's just he can't walk yet. He's just we call it cruising. So he can walk as long as he's holding on to things. And tonight I had him in the bathroom, and he just walked up to the bathtub, and I was holding his hands, and he just put his leg right up on top of the bathtub like he was going to step into the tub. Well, the thing is, you have to understand the scale of this. I mean, the bathtub the edge of the bathtub is probably up to his ribs, so that's like above his hips. So he was just casually lifting his leg up, like well above his hips, to try to step into the tub. And sometimes when I try to visualize the things that kids try with adults, the results are comical. So anyway, that's my current adventure, and along with the SSSVEDA, vlogging is a bit of an adventure too. And I think it also fits kind of some of the criteria. Oh yeah, I wanted to mention the criteria of risk. When it comes to politics, a lot of people don't realize that there are some risks involved. In order to, even though a lot of politicians and people will say that, they're encouraging you to run for office. The reality of the law is that they don't encourage novices to run. They encourage, you'll probably do all right if you join up with a major party, but if you run with a minor party, you really need to be very careful about the laws, because a lot of different things are, if you don't do them properly and you get in trouble for them and you end up getting convicted for them, they're actually felonies. So even something as simple as while circulating petitions, if you falsify a petition signature, that's a felony. In fact, there was a case of a major party candidate, though not a mainstream major party candidate, I don't believe. She was a doctor, and she had her petition forms in another room of her doctor's office. And so as patients would come in and see her, she would suggest that they go into the other room and sign this. You need to be present to witness a petition signature as the person circulating the petition. And in this case, she wasn't, and there was evidence that she wasn't. So she was actually tried and convicted, and she was tried and charged, or she was charged at least with, I believe it was 5 separate felonies out of this. So, it's kind of bad for a doctor to become a felon. Also, you need someone to help manage your money. There's a lot of paperwork involved in political reporting. So a lot of these laws are supposedly there to protect against fraud from, or like a multimillionaire buying a candidate or something like that. But the interesting thing is that they have a very chilling effect on small candidates. I mean, I've had races where I ran for U.S. Congress, and I didn't even collect $5,000, which is the minimum threshold for reporting. But that was, I don't know, maybe in 2008 or something. And to this day, I still get, harassing letters telling me that I'm going to face tremendous penalties for not reporting the funds that I gained. And I mailed them years ago and told them that I didn't even, collect more. I didn't even get near the threshold of $5,000. It was largely a paper candidacy. So, there really is a very real risk, and people can go to jail for playing the politics game and getting it wrong. So, to me, it fits all the criteria of a great adventure, and I look forward to watching some of your videos and seeing what kind of adventures you guys have been up to. So anyway, I promise my voice will recover. Like and subscribe to this video, and be sure to comment. I really like the conversations we've had in the comments, and I'd love to hear some more of your thoughts, and also in this specific case, whether any of you have ever thought about running for office just as a learning experience, just so you know what it's really like. Also, another great thing, when you're running for office, you're backstage with all the other candidates. You get to know all the people on the ballot on a personal level. And, I've met people who went on to serve on the Supreme Court. I've got, I've spent a lot of time with the guy who's currently mayor of the city I live in. Lots and lots of people. I mean, it's to the point where I'll be walking down the street and someone will call out, and it's some state senator who recognized me going down the street. It's also fun too because people, when you're running a very small campaign like I have in the past, you kind of get this feeling like nobody's watching. But one of the things that I've learned is that there are a lot of people who are watching, and they're kind of campaigning, through you in their mind. And so it's kind of interesting. One night I was shopping at the grocery store late at night, and I just was buying some hot dogs, and I went up to the hot dogs and I just picked some like I normally would, and all of a sudden this guy next to me who's putting hot dogs on the rack, he just stood up and said, "Oh my God, it's Mark Noble." And he's like wanted to shake my hand and everything, and of course I didn't know who this guy was. It's people tell you that they appreciate what you're doing, even though they recognize how futile it is and that the system's rigged. So, that's one of the nicer things about spending so much time and energy, learning about something like that. So that was definitely rewarding. But anyway, like I said, like, subscribe, and comment. I'd love to hear your stories about this as well. So anyway, that's it for me.